Welcome to Parents Reimagined. I'm your host, Kan Yen, and each episode I bring you real stories of people like you who have transformed their relationships with their parents. If you're wanting support with your parent relationship, visit parentsreimagined.com to learn more. On Parents Reimagined today, we have my friend Aliceanne Schmidt. Aliceanne is a psychologist, and we met living in Austin together, being a part of some authentic relating communities. And I'm so delighted to have you here on the podcast. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's good to see you.
Well, start off by sharing a bit about the context of the family that you grew up in.
So I was raised in a small town in Iowa, and like north of Des Moines, maybe 2 hours, maybe 20,000 people, 25,000. Mom stayed at home until her and dad divorced when I was in junior high, maybe. And then she had to go find a job and do the work thing. Dad built houses, mostly construction worker. But he also was very handy, knew how to do any and everything. And mom, similarly at home, was also very, she could sew and she could cook and she could bake bread and she could grow a garden, and dad could build a house and fix a car and fix the plumbing. And so I think they passed that on to us. I mean, it was just, we could do anything we wanted. And if we didn't know how to do it, we could certainly go figure it out. And so it was, I think, that kind of salt of the earth, sort of industrious, you can just, anything you can do with your hands, you could figure it out. And there's no reason why not. And so I have come to appreciate in my adult life just how much of a gift that was. Because not everybody, I think, gets that lesson growing up, and it served me very well.
And I know we're talking about your mom today, so share a bit about what the dynamic was like with her growing up.
So, I did not like my mother growing up, certainly, and for most of her life while she was alive. She died about 15 years ago. But we always butted heads, and we were both very, very strong-willed and opinionated women, and she was very, wanted order and routine and rigor. My friends called her the drill sergeant, and I did not. So all I knew how to do was rebel. So that was our dynamic for almost her entire life. It was just us kind of fighting with each other. She wasn't somebody who asked questions about what you thought or what you wanted. She was somebody who just told you how it was.
And as I hear about how you're describing her, somebody who has a very particular view, and often offered you these directives, it sounds like the dynamic growing up was her being controlling and you being rebellious. Sound right? Yeah.
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, take us into adulthood. What did that look like? How did that evolve into adulthood?
So it was always known you were going to go to school and you're going to get good grades so you can get the good job and you can be successful so you won't end up homeless on the street or in jail or both. And I told her when I was 18, Mom, I think I want to be, I can't remember if I told her I wanted to be a psychologist or a therapist. And she just looked at me and she's like, you can't. I mean, she literally laughed in my face. She's like, you can't be a therapist. She's like, you have no idea what you're talking about any of that. I had a lot of kind of juvenile delinquency in my teenage years, spent time in technical jail, with a sliding door and everything, or in a shelter for youth. And then I spent 6 months in a state-run facility. It was like a behavioral rehab place. And so I had a kind of a colorful past that I think for her seemed just absurd that I would then go into some kind of profession that could help perhaps people like myself. And so I think she just didn't know how to square those two realities. And it's interesting how I just swallowed her words and believed them completely. You know, her telling me, "You can't do that." I was just like, "Well, okay, I guess I can't do that." Um, and so I almost finished college, but then ended up dropping out when I had a semester left because I just genuinely like there was nothing else that called to me. And I'm like, well, I'm not going to graduate with something that I don't genuinely want to be in. So I went and found a job and worked. I figured like I'll just work for a while and then maybe kind of I'll figure it out and something will come to me. And her and I, we kept in touch. I lived a couple hours away, but we weren't close because we never had been really. I mean, I wanted her to be in my life and I certainly wanted her approval. But she was just so harsh and so judgmental and opinionated. Even though if technically maybe she was right, you know, and like I can reflect on the things that she felt and thought then, and I can find maybe the truth in it, but the way that it was communicated was just so brutal, that I couldn't really do anything with it, but just sort of hold it at arm's length. And so it felt uh, like a negotiation, like having her in my life was a bit of a negotiation. Like how close can I let her in so that I still feel a connection to her, but not too close because it's just too painful. Um, and I think she did the same thing with me because I was just very frustrating for her and maybe a little disappointing. So I think both of us probably were doing that dance with one another.
Okay. So this is your early adulthood, and how long does this phase go for?
So this lasts until I was, let's see, just like 27. I was in a really abusive relationship. I had been trying to leave for on and off for 6 years. Like every time I'd get out of the relationship and he'd stalk me or, you know, come after me in some kind of way or just, you know, I would get sucked, you know, it's like that typical abusive cycle and it just takes a while to break out of it. He and I ended up having a daughter and when I saw him treat our daughter the way he treated me, like that was just it was it. That was like a flip of a switch. And I was like, okay, I don't know how I'm getting out of this, but I'm gonna figure it out. And within about 6 months I had. And so I went home. Mom was my safe place at that time because she was far enough away from where he lived. Um and so I moved home when my daughter was almost 2, and within a month of me moving home, she was diagnosed with cancer. And so everything about the dynamic changed between the two of us. I think one, because my daughter was part of our dynamic now, like she kind of acted as this little bundle of light and joy and so it's hard to be so like fighting with each other when you've got just this little ball of beauty between the two of you. Uh, and her cancer really chilled her out, and she said to me, she's like, "Here, I thought I was rescuing you, and turns out you were coming home to rescue me." So, I think all of that shifting within just a few months kind of created some space for us to learn how to be genuine friends with one another for the first time, and that was nice.
Yeah, what's striking to me about that is this idea that somebody can, be influenced and change something that's been the case for your entire life, like her disposition, the way she was. And I think a lot of people with their parents think, oh yeah, that's just the way they are. They'll never change. So, it's beautiful to hear the story of, oh, she saw me being a mom and that shifted something in her. Do you have a sense of what that might have been like for her to witness and undergo that change?
I think mom was pretty sad. She wouldn't tell you that explicitly, but you could certainly feel the way that, it was almost like she moved through the world as if there was something wrong or like, and to be honest, I did too for most of my life, just this sense of like, it should not be this hard. Like, it should not be this painful. I think mom, in feeling that, would respond with bitterness and sometimes even cruelty. Um, like she journaled a lot, uh, and so I know she would kind of I imagine she processed that transition, and you have to, of course, she's dealing with cancer on top of it, um, and a diagnosis that she knows is almost certainly going to take her life. And so I think that it just puts a different kind of perspective on anything and everything that you're experiencing. Like it causes you to really, I think, distill down like what actually matters in this moment. Is it my fight for control and dominance, or is it just like, can I just learn to be with? Um, and so I imagine her, I'd often walk into her bedroom and she had her journal out and she'd be writing. And we ended up, once we got to the point, maybe 6 months or a year into me living at home again, we'd sit out on the back porch sometimes for hours and just talk, I think like genuine friends. And that period was really nice. And so I think once she kind of settled into a like not such a fight way of being, then her and I could kind of flow a little bit more. So it was gradual. It took probably a good year to find that space.
And I could imagine that was strange and unfamiliar to you, having always resisted and fought with this person. To,
Well, it was delightful more than anything. Like it was just so surprising to find like, oh, I genuinely like this person. Like she's a delight to be around. Like how unusual. I ended up leaving home, moving closer to where um my daughter's father was, so it was easier for her to see him and me at the same time. Um, I ended up moving out of state to Pennsylvania about 6 months after I left home. And so when I was in Pennsylvania, we'd talk on the phone almost every day for a good hour, usually on my commute to and from work. I had a long commute most days. And she was up early, and so I'd call her and she loved it. It felt very similar to when we'd have those conversations on the back porch in the nice spring weather. Like that period was very similar. So we kind of found a friendly vibe again, but then it would be interspersed with, she'd have a flare up or I would, one of the two. I probably had, I am sure, equal, resistance and rebelliousness towards her as she would controlling and kind of like nitpicking about my life. But 90% of the time we got along really well. And I was excited about like having her at my wedding, and um she died just 2 weeks before my wedding, a bit unexpectedly. I mean, not completely. We thought she would. we knew she was sick. We thought she'd have a little bit longer. Like we thought we had months, not like days kind of thing. So like those last couple of years of her life, um, I was far enough away. She couldn't witness all of the things about my life that disappointed her. And so I think she could create a, g- a, n- a version of my life that was appropriate to her and acceptable. And, it was easier for me to present my life in such a way to her that I knew she would approve of. And so I think it was just easy for us to live in this kind of fairy tale with one another. And, I'll take it. It was a nice time.
So when you look back at that journey, what reflections do you have now?
So as nice as all of that sounds, I still had an enormous amount of anger and just I had not yet I had no idea how to actually work with the level of my trauma and confusion and anger around our relationship and the impact that she had on my childhood. I was starting to kind of, but like the biggest feeling I had when she died was one of relief. Like, okay, like this, I no longer have this presence in my life that I am constantly managing. Yes, there was of course sadness and grief, but overwhelmingly it was relief that one, she wasn't in pain and sick anymore, but mostly just that I did not have her dominance in my life. And so I spent a good 10, 8, 8, 9, 10 years just in that place of absolute anger and kind of like she needed to be 10 million miles away from me. Like I couldn't engage at all. I knew that it couldn't stay like that for forever, but I knew that for however long it was, I needed to keep her there. And it really wasn't until I found the authentic relating community that I started to be able to learn how to relate to my mom in a way that was not like a 2-year-old vengeful toddler. So I don't know that much happened in that. Yeah, like that whole 10 years was just me being very angry and holding her at a very, very, very long length away.
Well, talk about what happened once you encountered authentic relating and how that shifted how you related to your mom.
So I think in that, in having others be present with me, I learned how to be present with myself, I think is the best way that I know how to describe what AR did for me. And then in being present with myself, I can find, I mean, obviously anger's super easy, at least it's with my relationship with my mom. But of course, anger's just protection. It's just it's like a little shield. And so under that was an enormous amount of pain and grief and confusion and fear and like why, how could you, tons of blame. And I just slowly learned how to, I'd find one layer and it's like, okay, well, we'll sit with this. It wasn't until after Bianca died uh, that I don't know if it was just the level of the grief that, just cracks you wide enough open uh, that helped me see mom was in just as much pain as I was in. It's like as I healed more and more of my own confusion and fear and discomfort, then I could start to be able to see that, oh, control was the only thing she knew how to do. Like in the same way that rebellion was the only thing I knew how to do For her, it was control. It's the same thing, just different side of the same coin. And so, like, in being with myself fully, I could then have some compassion for her.
Sounds like being with and accepting yourself gave you some space to accept her the way that she was. Yeah.
Yeah, very much.
So, what's your relationship been like with her since then?
So behind me, so that little wooden frame, it's a picture of mom when she was like 3. And then there's a little Polaroid in the middle, and that's a picture of me when I was about 3. And then on the very end is a picture of Bianca when she was about 3. And so I've kind of got all of us just in our little 3-year-old perfectness. uh, and I've got, there's other, that is kind of both my mom and my Bianca altar, behind me. And most days I will come in here and I'll light a candle and just honor and acknowledge them. I make it a point. It's taken some practice to look at them and see compassion and to see love and to see beauty rather than pain or judgment or condemnation. And so just that simple, it's almost like how we look is creates what we see. And so if I look at her with love and with compassion, then that is what I see. And it's also what I can experience. Um, but you can't, I don't think you can skip right to that. Like, I wouldn't suggest that anybody, go right to that deal. Like, you got to also have first, I think, felt all of your anger and your fear and your confusion and your pain. And then eventually you get to the point where you can honor what is true.
Yeah. Well, I think we're getting to where I want to go next, which is kind of what you learned and how that might help others. So,
Mm.
say, you were giving advice to someone who has a contentious relationship with a controlling, critical mother. What would you offer to that person?
So if they are still alive, you do need boundary. Like, you, you need a space for your own sovereign, dignified, sacred self. And maybe that means like creating some distance for a little while, but like whatever's having a good, healthy, protected space for yourself, so that you can then kind of unwind and feel through, and God knows, get some therapy. Like, have a good therapist with you. I had many in my journey. And trust that, that process for me took 10 years. I mean, this is like this, this is not overnight. And so, it's really only been within the last year and a half that I can have a picture of her up, and then I can start to get curious about, like, who are you as a human? You know, can I find some compassion? Can I acknowledge, yeah, you grew up in a house with an abusive, tyrannical father. That must have been hell. And I will talk to her. I mean, I'll talk to her picture on my altar, and I will almost like invite her presence into my life. Maybe I'm just sitting out on the back porch and I'm watching the sunrise, and I'll just imagine she's sitting there with me. And that too, I think, helps rewire. Like, it gives me the experience of like, oh, I can sit and watch the sunrise with my mom and we don't have to fight, and I can just love her.
Well, on that note, let's bring her into the conversation today. And if having shared the whole story today, what do you want to share with her now?
I think now I can say, thank you. mom for showing me, for letting me experience and feel that archetypal struggle between good and evil, between pain and joy, between bliss and heartache, like that thing within us that wants to categorize everything, like this is good and this is bad and this is right and this is wrong. Like that was our dynamic. And it's been a vehicle into figuring out what's beyond that. How so in other words, our relationship was perhaps the greatest teacher I could have had for finding a way to be able to accept the deep pain and tragedy of trauma as something incredibly beautiful, as actually an enormous gift. And so she was, as painful as it was, she was my greatest teacher, and I am very grateful.
Well, Aliceanne, thanks for sharing that wisdom, that hard-earned wisdom that you took from that relationship. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being a part of the podcast today.
Thank you. It was lovely.
Thank you for joining us on Parents Reimagined. If you'd like to support us, please subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast with a friend. We'd love to hear how these stories are impacting you, so feel free to drop us a line. And if you or someone you know has a remarkable transformation story with a parent, please reach out about being a guest on the show. If you're wanting some support with your parent relationship, visit parentsreimagined.com to learn about our programs that help you build healthier, more connected relationships with your parents. Our show today was produced and edited by me, Con Yen. Our theme music was composed by Vulcan Aaron. Until next time, take care of yourself, your families, friends, and anyone else you love.